On the 4th of April, 1922, at exactly 3:30 in the afternoon, Johann Schultenbauer and his brother Joseph were sent by their father, Lawrence, to the farm of their neighbors, the Gruber family, to check on them. The family had disappeared from sight 4 days prior, despite smoke rising from the chimney of the house. The two boys were unable to get any response, so they returned to their father and informed him that no one had answered. The father was not convinced, so he headed to the farm with other neighbors. This time, they entered the barn, hearing the sounds of their animals as well. And here came the shock. 4 bodies lying on the barn floor in a scene that the villagers would not forget for decades to come. 4 bodies of 4 members of the household out of 6. But where were the rest? The neighbors hurried to the house in a state of panic and chaos, and the answer awaited them. 2 more bodies were waiting to be discovered. The news spread, and the villagers flocked to the stricken farm. Everyone there was asking the same question. Who killed the Gruber family? Or more precisely, who committed the crime of the mysterious Hinterkaifeck Farm? By the way, this question still lingers in the minds of the people of that region to this day, without an answer, making it one of the most mysterious crimes in the world. Peace and respect, my dear friends. May you be well, and may your times be pleasant. Welcome to this video. Mysterious murders are numerous in our world, and the topic is not new. History is full of many stories about such crimes, and perhaps what we are talking about today is the most prominent of these crimes ever, the Hinterkaifeck Farm crime, a topic that will draw many question marks in your imagination. So take a deep breath, for today's crime is strange and mysterious. Very mysterious. Let us begin the events of this crime, which take us back in time to the year 1922, specifically to the night of March 31st, at a farm located 70 kilometers from Munich, Germany. The German Gruber family resided there, consisting of the father Andreas, the mother Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 children Cecilia Jr., age 7, and Joseph, and the maid Maria, who had started her job on the very day of the crime, replacing the previous maid who had resigned 6 months earlier for reasons revealed later. On the evening of Friday, March 31st, the new maid, Maria, arrived at the Gruber farm to begin her work. Her sister dropped her off, unaware she was delivering her to a tragic fate. The sister stayed briefly, met the family, and left, knowingly, becoming the last person to see the Grubers alive. 4 days passed since that evening. Mail piled up in the family's mailbox. Young Cecilia did not attend school. No signs of life emerged from the house except smoke rising from the chimney and the natural sounds of animals from the barn. On April 1st, coffee delivery workers knocked on the farm door but received no answer. On April 4th, mechanic Albert Hofner arrived to repair an engine as scheduled. He found no trace of the family, only the sounds of animals and the family dog barking from the barn. Unconcerned, he worked on the engine for 4.5 hours before leaving all under the watch of their neighbor Lawrence, the same man mentioned earlier who sent his sons to check on the Grubers. As previously recounted, Lawrence and other neighbors intervened, discovering the bodies. 4 in the barn: Andreas, Cecilia Sr., Victoria, and Cecilia Jr., and 2 inside the house, Joseph and Maria. News spread. The entire Gruber family had been murdered. Rumors and speculation followed. The previous maid had resigned 6 months prior, later telling locals and police. She fled due to terrifying noises, or footsteps and commotion from the upper floor, though no one was there. The father, Andreas, had even investigated but found nothing. In March, the same month as the crime, Andreas found a strange newspaper near the farm, published in Munich over 70 kilometers away. Locals confirmed no one subscribed to it, deepening the mystery. Andreas also reported footprints in the snow leading from the forest to a broken door in the farm's machinery room. He found no one inside, and the footprints stopped at the door. One night, the family heard footsteps upstairs, mirroring the former maid's claims yet again. No one was found. Neighbors urged Andreas to contact the police, but he refused. Then the tragedy struck. After the bodies were discovered, investigations began. Key findings: the entire family was killed with a single weapon, a hatchetist to crush their skulls. The killer ensured their victims were dead. Police confirmed all family members died simultaneously except young Cecilia, who survived briefly. During this time, Her hair was completely torn out unknown, whether by the killer or the child herself in panic. The robbery motive was dismissed. No forced entry, and a large sum of money in the house remained untouched. The bodies were buried without their heads. As the skulls were sent to Munich for analysis, suspicion swirled around potential perpetrators. The killers lured the family to the barn using animal sounds, suggesting familiarity with the farm's routines. Witnesses reported strangers near the forest's edge on April 1st, who hid their faces and vanished. The killer or killers stayed in the house for several days. After committing the crime, they lit the stove, ate bread and food, and even fed the animals in the barn. This detail that someone remained in the house after the crime was confirmed by local residents. One villager passed by the farm a day after the murder, and 3 days before the bodies were discovered. He saw the stove lit and noticed a strange smell emanating from it. However, when he approached the door, someone shone a bright light into his eyes, causing him to lose his vision momentarily and sending him into a state of panic. He fled the farm in haste. The prime suspect was a man referred to as the living dead. Remember when I mentioned that the Gruber's widowed daughter, Victoria, lived with them along with her 2 children? Her husband was presumed to have been killed in December 1914 during World War I, but his body was never returned home. In fact, it was never found. If he were alive, why would he kill his wife and the mother of his children? The answer, to say the least, is disturbing. According to rumors and investigations, the motive was rooted in an incestuous relationship between Victoria and her father, Andreas. This sinful relationship was proven in court, resulting in the father being sentenced to 1 year in prison and the daughter to 1 month of imprisonment and community service. But that's not all. The younger son, Joseph, born during his father's absence, was, according to local sources and residents, the product of this incestuous relationship. The husband, presumed dead, allegedly learned of this disgrace and, naturally, was driven to madness. He supposedly committed the crime after stalking and sneaking into the farm. However, no evidence was found to support this assumption. Not even a shred of evidence was found to prove that the husband, Karl, was indeed alive, despite reports in later years that some prisoners released by Soviet forces at the end of World War II claimed the Soviet officer who freed them spoke German and openly admitted to being the perpetrator of the infamous Hinterkaifeck Farm massacre. What do you think? Could this Soviet officer have been Karl, the husband, who had on multiple occasions expressed a desire to go to Russia? No one knows for sure. The second suspect was a villager named Lawrence Schultenbauer. Yes, the same neighbor who sent his sons to investigate before going to the farm himself. Rumors circulated about his relationship with Victoria after the death of his wife in 1918. In fact, some rumors suggested that the child, Joseph, might actually be Lawrence's son. Poor child, isn't it? The crime allegedly occurred because Victoria demanded that Lawrence take responsibility for Joseph's upbringing and expenses. But why was Lawrence under suspicion? He was a neighbor and landowner in the area, with thorough knowledge of the farm and its surroundings. His strange behavior after the crime was discovered. For example, immediately after the bodies were found, Lawrence and a group of young men went to the farm. He had to break down the barn door to enter because all the doors were locked. However, after finding the 4 bodies in the barn, Lawrence used a key he had to open the front door and entered the house alone. Police reports indicated that the house key had gone missing a few days before the crime, but nothing was proven against Lawrence. He might have had the key because he was a trusted neighbor, or even because of his relationship with Victoria. When questioned about why he entered the house alone on the day the bodies were discovered, despite the possibility of the killer still being inside, Lawrence claimed he was looking for his son. Nevertheless, no arrest warrant was issued against him. In fact, Lawrence won several lawsuits against those who accused him of being the Hinterkaifeck butcher. Numerous names and motives were circulated in this case. For example, the names Adolf and Anton Gamm emerged as suspects due to political and racial motives related to combating communism and Polish minorities. On her deathbed, the sister of these 2 men claimed they were the wanted killers, but the police were unable to prove any evidence against them, and the case against them was dropped. Other names, such as Karl and his brother Andreas, as well as Peter Weber, the Thull brothers, and others, were also listed as suspects, with robbery cited as the motive. However, as mentioned earlier, the absence of robbery evidence and sufficient evidence in general prevented charges from being substantiated against any of them. In his book, The Man from the Train, author Bill James suggested that a German immigrant named Paul Muller might be responsible for the crime. According to James, Muller was the prime suspect in the murder of a family in Massachusetts, USA, and other crimes that bore similarities to the Hinterkaifeck Farm massacre, such as the method of killing, the weapon used, the mass murder of entire families, the piling of bodies, and the absence of a robbery motive. Investigations continued for some time, despite the lack of evidence and the significant tampering with the crime scene by neighbors when the bodies were discovered. However, the investigations yielded no results, and the crime remained a great mystery that continues to intrigue detectives and thrill-seekers alike, even though the farm, the site of the incident, no longer exists. A year after the crime, the farm was demolished at the request of the villagers, as it had become a source of fear, anxiety, and terror. Reports to the police about strange sounds, ghosts, and eerie phenomena numbered in the hundreds, leading to the farm's complete demolition. Despite this, investigations persisted, albeit on a smaller scale, with every potential lead being pursued to solve the mystery. For example, in 1999, the police received a call from an elderly woman who claimed that her former landlord knew the mysterious killer. The police followed up, only to discover that the former landlord had died before the woman could reveal the crucial secret. In 2007, a group of students from the German police academy re-examined the case using modern investigative techniques. These students confirmed that the original investigation had been thorough for its time, but criticized the failure to collect fingerprints from the crime scene as a standard procedure. Ultimately, the students concluded that it was impossible to prove guilt at that point, as everyone connected to the crime had already died. However, in their report, they unanimously agreed on one name, but refused to disclose it out of respect for the suspect's children and grandchildren. What do you think, my friends? Who do you believe this name belongs to? Could it be one of the suspects we mentioned in this episode? Or is this mysterious criminal, who has eluded the police for over 100 years and left the Gruber family case unsolved to this day, someone entirely different? Analyze and share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be waiting for you. If you enjoyed this, my friends, this was the topic of today's video. One of the most mysterious crimes of all time. An entire family murdered in their home in cold blood, a mystery that no one has been able to solve to this day. And if they have, the secret has been successfully kept. The case of the German Gruber family once again demonstrates how far the human psyche can go in terms of crime and brutality.